Welcome to Go Green Radio, everybody. I am so glad that you could join us today. We have a really important topic to share with you. Our guests today are going to be talking about a study that just recently came out. It was co-authored by Water Education for Latino Leaders, also known as WELL, and that was also done in conjunction with the University of California, Davis, UC Davis. And this is a groundbreaking study that shows that there is a lack of representation amongst Latinos, BIPOC community members, and women in California's water sector governance. And we're going to break this down, show what their study entailed, what their methodology was, and really unpack this, not just the problem of underrepresentation, but more importantly, the solutions. And so I'd like to start with Victor Griego. He is the founder and president of WELL. And I'm so glad to have you on the show, Victor. I'd like to begin by asking you why you formed the organization Water Education for Latino Leaders. What was the gap that you were trying to fill with this organization?
Well, thank you, Jill Buck, for allowing Dr. Solis and myself to be part of this conversation and having well be represented to your audience. So again, thank you for that opportunity. Um, I'm going to answer that question in two parts. One, I think our public work many times is driven by our private interest. And so as I look to retire from my public profession, I wanted to work with my daughter. I had a long interest in working with my father, but he passed away, and I was never able to do that. And so, as I looked to the future of my public work, my daughter said to me when I asked her what was she going to do with her environmental science degree. She was at University of San Francisco, and she said, Dad, water is critical to California. I didn't really know what that meant. I had not done much work in that field. And so I spent a year traveling up and down California, listening to people telling me about the state of water in California. And what I found was the gap was Latinos were not involved in major um, leadership positions in the water sector. And as the study will show, and I'll let Dr. Solis speak to that, there was a gap. There was a huge gap in that. And so he said, well, what can we do with that? I studied a PhD program at Claremont Graduate University, and I learned that research is all about the gap, as you described. And so that was a very important gap. And quite, honestly, the Latino leadership gap and the female gap is really across many industries, not just water. It was just the water. It was just the subject that I chose to get into. But I think women are underrepresented in all major public policy professions, as well as other minorities. So this isn't new. It's just something that I chose to do because of a private interest.
I love that answer. And I have one of my three adult kids is in the sustainability world as well, and so I get that. We want to work with them, we want to encourage them, and we want to stay close to our babies, even no matter how old they get.
Yeah, the other thing is, and I think Dr. Solis certainly could agree with this because I see it. When you work with young people or you talk with young people, you're dealing in the future.
Yeah.
See, they look up. As we get older, we look down, we look behind.
Hmm.
We have memories, we have experiences, which aren't bad. We learn a lot from those experiences. But young people, they're the future, and they give us the future. They give us what the future is going to be and what it should be, and what today we should be working on for their future.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Victor. And I want to bring in Dr. Samuel Sandoval Solis with UC Davis. I want to discuss first part one of the study that you co-authored with Well, and that was called Assessing Representation, Access, and Transparency of Decision Makers in California's Water Sector. And in part one of that study in August of 2025, you identified 1,980 public water agencies, or PWAs, and you sampled 688 of them, or 35%. What did you find in terms of representation of women, Latinos, and Black, Indigenous, and people of color on their governing boards?
Hola Jill, hola a todos to your audience. I'm really happy to be here. So, just stepping a little bit back from what Victor said, many times I've been in these conference rooms, and not sure how many of you have feel, but you are the only woman, the only Latino, the only person that is in these rooms. And up to a certain point, I just with Victor, we start thinking about like what was that gap. So how many more women and how many more women in decision-making positions, how many more Latinos? What was that gap? As you said, 2 years ago, that was our first round. We went and of roughly 2,000 agencies. So, and for listeners, so it can be the city that you live, the city of Davis in my case, right? It has a board, the city has city board members. But it can be also a water district, the Metropolitan Water District. Um, all of these districts, they get the people to make the decisions there. They either get elected. So in a given jurisdiction, there is a voting process, and from that jurisdiction, a person goes to the board. And ultimately, this group of people make decisions about your water and my water, how expensive it is or cheap, how well maintained or not it is, how we are thinking of or allowing our current present generation, our young people, or not achieve this. Those are the folks that are doing this. This is the agencies that are doing it. Women in statewide represents 50% of the population. And in decision-making positions, they only represent 26%. So the gap is double. In order for women to be on par of their population representation, the decision makers has to double. Now, in terms of Latinos, we represent 42% of the state population. Only 14% are decision makers. So Latinos have to triple. Now, other people of color, Native Americans, Blacks, Asians, they represent about 25% of the population. Only 6% are represented as decision makers. So this group has to quadruple. Women double, Latinos triple, other people of color quadruple their numbers to, to be on par. Why is this important? I think some of what I see is that we bring our experiences, our culture, but we also bring that part of the community that needs to have a seat on the table. And we need just to our voice should be heard, the voice of our community should be heard, because in the end, that's the good thing to do. It's not only the right thing, but it is also the most advantageous. Why? Because we bring these perspectives that help not only our community, but all the community in California to be better. And
I
so
love
those are
that.
the gaps, Jill.
Yes,
Uh, can, uh,
absolutely. And
uh,
go ahead,
Dr.
Victor.
Yeah, can I add to that? We to expand on what Dr. Saliga says, we believe there's three reasons why Latinos and other ethnic minorities and minorities. One is we can assist, as Dr. Solis said, in policies and programs because we represent, as mentioned, 42% of the population of California. And so how districts and cities and any other water management entity delivers programs and develops policies should incorporate in that policy and programs the perspective, the experiences of the all people. And as you well know, that doesn't happen often. America is based on a Western European culture. It clashes with Louisiana and the French. It clashes with the Spaniards in the Southwest, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of we have this, whether we call it a mosaic or a melting pot, whatever how you want to subscribe to the political analysis. but it's important that all be represented in the policy development and policy implementation. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's a $30 billion industry in California, and you know that well, Jill Buck, because you live
Hmm.
here. It's like the fourth largest part of our economy. And again, if people aren't participating, that doesn't work very well. The person on the hill cannot come down the hill if people aren't participating in the economy. So we need to have access and fair, equal distribution, as we're seeing it now. We see the great divide in America and probably throughout the world. And then the third, and probably one of the most important, is the political mobilization of people. You see, 80% of local water management is funded by local money, whether it's ratepayers, whether it's taxes, whether it's local bonds passed, etc. Everyone thinks, oh, you got to go to Washington or you got to go to Sacramento. Yes, you do, but that's only about 15 to 20% of the money. It's the user who pays to manage the water systems in their community. So therefore, if an electoral body wants to pass a bond, well, they're going to need the voters in their town. And so if you don't have leadership mitigating that conversation, how is the voter going to vote in favor of investing in their water management, whether it's old infrastructure or water contamination? They're not. The average voter votes no when they don't know what's going on. And so if they don't have trusted messengers, then they will not invest in their infrastructure, in their water. And you see that over and over and over. And so what ends up happening is many of these small public water agencies who don't take care of their systems, they usually get bought out, or not bought out, but a private water company has the capacity to come in and take over. And so if we are going to have a democracy by people, for the people, then we need to educate them. And that's the purpose of the study, and that's the purpose of WELL.
Well said, Victor. I mean, I could talk to you all day about some of those issues because I've seen that play out in my own community in California, up in Northern California. But I want to ask you to describe, and I'll go back to Dr. Sandoval real quick. Um, uh, Part one of the study considered systemic barriers, and Victor, you can hop in on this too. We have about a minute until we're going to take a quick commercial break, but you identified some systemic barriers that prevent a more diverse representation. What were some of those systemic barriers?
So for me, it was that we didn't have access to the instructions on how to become a board member. So it's not that people don't want, it's that simply instructions are not there. It's not that people don't want to do it. It's that some of that information is hidden. Also, the announcements don't go far and wide to all the communities. Not sure about you, Victor. What do you think?
No, there are certainly systems that obstruct or limit the access to entering into the field. But I also believe that it's incumbent upon the leadership, the Latino leadership, to educate and to train, because
Mhm.
it's one thing to know what needs to be done, but if we don't have the leadership to want to do the work and to see the importance, then that's not going to solve things. And we see that. We see
Yeah.
many of our leadership leaving city council members, for example, and going on to
Mm-hmm.
water boards. So that's great that when they see the value.
Absolutely. Well, we've got so much more to talk about with this study and the issues that are brought to light in this study. But we've got to take a quick commercial break, so don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio. I'm so glad that you could join us. We're talking about a new report that was recently released. The executive summary is easy to find. The report is called Assessing Representation, Access, and Transparency of Decision Makers in California's Water Sector. And this was co-written by Water Education for Latino Leaders and UC Davis. And Dr. Sandoval is with us from UC Davis. And in the executive summary of part two of this study, we read an interesting line here. I'm going to read it for our listeners' sake and then have you talk about it. It says, inequities have consequences. Inaccessible, expensive, and polluted water supplies continue to plague significant Latino and other communities of color who suffer disproportionately. Some 56% of failing public water systems in California serve disadvantaged communities. 67% serve majority communities of color. So to help us unpack this statement, I'd like to start with how we define a quote unquote failing public water system. Can you do that for us, Dr. Sandoval?
Yes. So, okay, there are two main laws or two main concepts that we should be aware. The first one is safe drinking water. There is the Safe Drinking Water Act. So that regulation keeps an eye on the tap of everyone. So if you this morning or this afternoon went to grab a coffee or grab a glass of water from your tap, there is someone monitoring that the water quality that you're drinking is drinkable. So that's the first one. The second one is the human right to water. In 2012, we are one out of three states in the United States that actually declared that every human in the state of California has the right to safe, clean, affordable, and accessible water for everyone. So all of us require that have that right. Unfortunately, there are communities that don't have that luxury. To be more specific, in 2026, we are thinking about 660,000 people in California without access to safe, clean, affordable water. Every twice a year, these small systems, they have to grab a water sample, send it to a lab, and analyze what is in it. And then there are other benchmarks for affordability, access, that actually people have access at home, not in a distant place. We have about 660,000 Californians without that. Most of them are communities of color, most of them are disadvantages. Why is that? Victor mentioned it just some moments ago. A lot of people, so when you have leadership, and then that leadership is thinking in what is the next move or what is the next gig moving, try not to pay that much attention or do not ruffle that many feathers in this,
Mhm.
right? Because basically, so Jill, you want to have clean water. It will cost you this year an increase in your rate of $2 or $3. But that increase can make sure that you will have clean water. But if the decision makers don't decide to do that because they are looking for their next gig, increasing the water rates will kick them out of the office. Then all of a sudden, they are not defending the interests of the people that they represent. Many of these systems, as you mentioned, we have these two policies, and it's not that people don't want to follow it. It's that people making decisions try to get by, so they will go to their next gig.
Mm. Interesting. Victor, I want to bring you back into the fold because when we think about failing public water systems in California, it seems uh, unbelievable for a lot of folks that that could be the case in one of the largest economies in the world. But the upshot of what we were just talking about is that we should be able to pull out a map of California, point to the geography of a failing public water system, and overlay that map with population data that shows the demographics of the people who live in that area, and that's simple enough. But that means that this issue must surely be known by decision makers in the state. And yet these inequities are allowed to continue, like I said, in one of the largest economies in the world. I want you to help us understand what these inequities look like in the homes and neighborhoods that are impacted. Put a human face on this data.
Well, think about, as Dr. Solis introduced it, think about yourself getting up in the morning to brush your teeth and the water comes out brown. Are you going to brush your teeth? No, you're not going to brush your teeth. Then you go to the shower to bathe and the water comes out brown. Are you going to take a shower? No. Then you walk into the living room, or excuse me, to the kitchen to make a cup of coffee, and you open up the spout to make your coffee, and it comes out brown. You're not going to do so. And then of course you think, well, what I'm paying my water bill, right? And so now you've got to go and buy bottled water or So that's one example. That's one example. The other example is, and we take our leadership to the Coachella Valley, and we go to what are called Polanco parks. And Polanco parks are pretty much used trailer homes, and the water is shipped in because there's no plumbing, and the water is contaminated, arsenic and other contaminants. And so these residents who are very, low income working families, mostly farm workers, they've got to buy these filters. They put them under their sink to try to filter water, but it's expensive. It's like $300, $400, $500 for these things, and they only last a couple of weeks because the contamination is so strong and it needs to be changed. And so these families, there's evidence that there's been cancer, the children's hair fall down, there's rash on the, so that's the human part of it. And so many times, a lot of these communities were irrigation districts. And so the level of clean water was not potable water. But yet families have grown up in these neighborhoods because of their farm worker experience, and they end up living there, et cetera. And so there's no infrastructure to bring in clean potable water. And so that's some of the face to what is going on. And
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to put ourselves in the shoes of the more than 600,000 Californians living this way. It seems archaic at best. And Dr. Sandoval, I would like for you to help our listeners understand why California has failing public water systems in the first place. I mean, what is going on with the infrastructure and the financing that causes these systems to fail?
So, there is, I think there are a lot of intertwined causes. And I will step back to what Victor said. So we have seen arsenic in Coachella. And we have seen 1 to 3 TCP, so a pesticide that causes cancer in Fresno, close to that area, right? We have seen nitrate everywhere where is agriculture. So a fertilizer that drips into the groundwater that known carcinogenic. We have seen issues related with raw sewage going into the rivers in the Sierra, in the North Coast. A lot of these are communities that are low income. The common denominator that I've seen is low income. It is very expensive to afford a house. So these people go to these specific places where there is not that much of a maintenance. Why is not that? This is where it gets intertwined. In the Central Valley, there are a lot of cities that ends with truck. Monterrey truck, Davis truck. So these are communities that they were put in there like 3 miles, 5 miles from the main city, Ceres, from Fresno. But they were put in there because of racism. So the growers, the owners of the land will live in cities, but they didn't want their farm workers back in the 30s to live close to them. Now, those they are left on their own, to figure out with a system that is expensive. And we didn't invest on that one. The people behind doing all these analysis didn't invest in collecting the $2, the $3 that I was telling you. Now we have lack of funding. We inherited a system that is very divided, that is very spread out. And on top of it, we have the unaffordability. If you ask me, that those are the three things. And then, of course, people like what Victor said, farm workers or low-income people. And it is not a sin. It is not an issue to have a low income. These people don't want anything more of what we have. They want exactly the same access to clean water. This is not people asking for more. Anyway, Jill.
Yeah, no, that's very insightful, and that helps us a lot. And Victor, I want to go back to you because in the executive summary of part 2 of the study, Well asserts that solutions to these inequities mean that Latinos, women, and BIPOC individuals must be part of the decision-making bodies and executive staff in local and regional water agencies and districts. And I'd like for you to give us a real-world example of how having this type of representation can change the public policy that's enacted by these water authorities in order to address inequities.
Well, with the try not to repeat what I said earlier. I'm going to repeat that. Number one, by having women and Latinos and other minorities in positions of responsibility, authority, et cetera, you get better public policy and better programs implementation. That's the first thing. The second thing is you open up economic opportunities. There's examples throughout California where you have the elected board members come from a diverse background, Latinos, women, et cetera, and you'll tend to see not only the general manager but his or her staff reflective of the community and have a more diverse leadership team. The reverse is true. You could have and there's an example. You can have several examples. You can have a woman or person of color as the general manager, but if the elected body is not female or a minority, her or his staff will not be reflective. So they can pick one person, which is very important, but if they don't have the political will, the political, atmosphere, then that one person, that woman or that person, ethnic minority person, cannot do her or his job in making the whole agency diverse. So it's on one hand, it's very clear what could be done, but there's some idiosyncrasies to the process as well. And then again, the last thing, as I said earlier, that is extremely important is political mobilization, which in a democracy is critical. If you don't have a trusted leader to help mitigate these complicated issues around financing, as Dr. Solis said earlier, without money, these entities aren't going to survive. It's like a family home.
Absolutely.
If you don't take care of the leaky roof, when you need to, then the next storm comes and the house gets wiped out. And then
That's right.
the children look at the parents and say, what happened? Oh, well, we went to Disneyland with the money,
Right.
we bought a, whatever. So you've got
right.
to educate your constituents to do the right thing. And I've seen over the years cities where they end up not investing and not passing on the cost to the residents. And then the system goes, broke or doesn't, function properly. And then
it can't be kept up. Exactly. Yeah.
And then they have to raise the rates so much that the residents get upset.
Yep, I've seen that too. If any of our listeners from my hometown are watching right now, we're in the midst of this. So we have a lot more to discuss, and we're going to be talking about some of the traits and skills and knowledge that Well is helping to prepare some of these folks to take with them into leadership positions in water agencies. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio. So glad that you could all tune in. I want to go right into the next question with Victor. We've been talking about representation and making sure that we have Latinos, Black, Indigenous, and women represented, they're currently underrepresented on public water agency boards and staff leadership. And I'm guessing that I know the answer to your question, to this question, Victor, that it's not enough just to elect people of a certain background or a certain gender to these boards, but there's some requisite skills and knowledge that they need. And I know that you all do training at Well for elected officials, and I'd like for you to talk about what that training includes and what that training prepares elected officials to do once they get into a position of authority in a water agency.
Well, thank you, Jill. Scholars have described leadership in two ways. One, descriptive leadership, and that is, as you mentioned, women, people of color. We need a Latino, we need a woman, we need someone from our neighborhood. We need somebody who, quote, looks like us. And then you've got substantive leadership or substantive representation, and that is of a particular subject matter, and they know that this is so we see more and more descriptive leadership when it comes to water, and so therefore we recruit women, we recruit people of color and minorities to participate in our program, so we can give them the substantive experience and knowledge of water. But how we do that is, Alex de Tocqueville, the French philosopher, describes. He talks about combining is the essence of learning and developing knowledge. So we combine three different aspects to our work. First, we provide content, but we don't lecture. We've developed something called the method of inquiry. And inquiry has been around for 40, 50 years as a staple of education in America, but it actually started back, with Socrates and Plato, by asking questions. And so we teach the content by teaching our leadership how to ask questions. And so when we have content experts come and present, they don't present, they don't have a PowerPoint, they don't lecture, they just sit there and they're asked questions by our leadership based on self-interest. So where the leader comes from, what the situation in their community is, drives their curiosity, it drives their inquiry, and that's how they develop the knowledge based on their interest, their self-interest. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is we make sure that the experience have what we call TMI, that it needs to touch, move, and inspire. So we go to different parts of California and have tours and conversations with people. As I mentioned, when Coachella, we go to these Polanco parks. We actually go into people's homes to see these water systems not working. And I tell you, we had this one gentleman, African-American leader. He said he came out of that home and he says, I'm from Mississippi, and this should not happen in California. And so the experiences that we take our folks on need to touch, move, and inspire. We go down to the Tijuana River. I remember Dr. Solis and I walked down to the water, and you see used tennis shoes, you see sweaters. So you get a feeling of the experience of what people are going through to be in the United States, and yet we fail anyone and all when we have inadequate water systems. And then the third thing, which is critical to learning, is relationships. So we make sure that the individuals who participate in our programs are afforded an opportunity to create long-lasting relationships, because that's how we best learn. We best learn by experiencing opportunities with other people so that we can support each other, we can ask questions of each other, but that we learn together. And so that is a constructive type of learning where you build upon your knowledge, but also a social constructive where together you work and learn new knowledge.
That sounds amazing. I want to go through your training. That sounds like an amazing experience.
Go to Northern California.
Um, Dr. Sandoval, there's a section in the executive summary of part 2 of the study that discusses access to decision making. And there are a couple of issues that I'd like to have you explain, but let's start with this one. Publicly available information online about how to become a board member of a water agency or authority. What did your study uncover about the accessibility of that information?
So only 38% of the instructions are available. So, I mean, you listeners, so think of it. You, after this conversation, you really want to run for your city council member, for being a water board member. And then you start looking like, okay, so what is the agency that provides my water and so on. And when you get to that website, you can't find the instructions on how to become a board member. Chances are 62% of the times we will not find those instructions. So that is one thing. One other thing that does happen is, how is it possible that we have all these decision making seats, so all these board of director groups filled, but we only have 38% of the instructions available. This was a really, I give it a good thought. Basically, what did happen is that when I was reading the bios, so all the information that we're telling you, we went and read the bios. We went to more than 1,000 websites. We read more than 5,000 bios of all the people doing this. And it is very telling. One of the things that I start seeing is that we were dealing with professional decision makers. I will tell you what to do. So most of the people that are board members, they were related to the water agency. So they work before as an employee, retire, and now they are as a board member. They are related to the water sector. They work on consultants for that one. They work in a government agency or NGO, and they have prior affiliation to other board of directors. So these are people. So think of it that now you find yourself in being in one board of director position, and someone comes and like, hey, Sam, guess what? Now we're gonna have a position on the water district available. Would you mind to run? This is how it happens. Just to be clear, 90% of the people, 90% of the decision makers that we analyze responded yes to one of these questions, one of these categories. 50% responded yes to three of these categories. What I'm trying to tell you, Jill, and the listeners, is that I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen of Davis, and I really want to run for election. As a citizen, there is a only 10% chance that you will figure out how to get in there. It is incredibly hidden how they are keeping all this gatekeeping, keeping all these keys unavailable. The one last thing that I do want to add to Victor's response. So there are groups that are helping citizens like you and me run for election. Water Leadership Institute, the Community Water Leaders Network, the Central Valley Partnership, and those help them out. I teach a course that is called the California Water Course and teach the basics of that. Victor wants now, so now you run for election, you got to be a board member. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, off you go, try to do your work. That's where the program with Victor and Well Untapped, train them once they are in office and provide them support.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there is another Educate to Lead to move people there. So anyway, we have options. Nonetheless, the gap is very large.
Yes, it's very insular, the world of appointed folks, elected folks, and the information that would allow that to kind of be more open and transparent. And Victor, I want to give you some time to help our listeners understand this statement from the study. It said, systemic barriers that continue preventing new candidates from stepping into board memberships and C-suite positions include a lack of awareness of the significance of these positions, a lack of advertising and instructions about how to become a board member, and a lack of or limited mentorship for newcomers. And I want to ask you, what policy recommendations does WELL have to overcome these systemic barriers?
Well, Dr. Solis just introduced a second program that we have. So we currently have two constituencies. We have elected officials, local elected officials. We have city council, municipal elected, city council mayors, etc. Then we have school boards, we have local water directors, and they participate in a 6-month fellowship called Untapped, Well Untapped. So it's like untapped potential, untapped water, etc. So in that program, we educate around water content to these elected officials. And the reason we select elected officials is because they're the closest to the people, as you well know. You see your council member or mayor at church, at soccer, at Little League, at the markets. And so they're the eyes and ears of the people, the local electeds. So we believe that that's really important. And many times, cities have water departments. And so they deliver water to the residents. Many cities have that. So that's why the local elected is important. The second reason they're important is because if they don't have a water system, they have a political bully pulpit, and they can speak to some of the private water agencies that might be in their city, or a larger water agency that they get their water from. So it's important that these local elected officials are involved. And then the other reason local electeds is they sometimes go to Sacramento. And even though we have 3 levels of government, the state of California is responsible for 50% of the water policy in the state. So one entity of the three, national, state, and local, the state is responsible for 50% of the policy. So we have, for example, we have 2 of our graduates who are now state legislators. One from Contra Costa County, Ana Maria Farias, and one from LA County, Celeste Rodriguez. So they graduate from this local, training or education, and then they move up to Sacramento, which is wonderful. They now a big, not that they're experts. Let's not fool ourselves. But at least water now is on their dashboard. It's on their
Yep.
policy dashboard when they think about it. So then the other constituency are water professionals. We now have a second fellowship that's called Educate to Lead, and that is to train mid-level women and people of color that are in the water profession to develop leadership skills. So they don't get water content. We don't spend time water content. It's leadership development, so they can move up and get into C-suite and general manager positions. And so
That's fantastic.
that's our constituency that we do.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, you had a question?
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then I will let you finish that thought, because that is good stuff. And I hate to cut you off, but we're going to break for just a second. Folks, we've got much more Go Green Radio right after this, so don't go away. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Go Green Radio. So glad that you could all tune in and so happy that we have the two guests that we do. Victor, I am going to go back to you because I had to cut you off for a commercial break and I want you to finish your thought. You were talking to us about some of the successes that you've had in placing folks who've gone through both tracks of your training program.
Yeah, I just want to share quickly an unscientific study or survey we did. We have the constituencies I mentioned of water professionals. And so we surveyed them and we found, and I'm sure this is somewhat reflective, I would defer to Dr. Solis on this, that of the folks in the water industry, 80% of them never studied water as an undergraduate student. 80%. They just got into the water field, by happenstance. And again, it's the water industry is a very great place to work. They have great health benefits, great retirement benefits, great, very competitive salaries. And it's not very dangerous. It's not like a fireman or a longshoreman, and they make extremely good money. So 80% never got into it. However, 85% never leave. They never
Wow.
leave. They say,
Wow. So
"Oh
that's a
no,
good gig.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here." So why is that industry not afforded to other people? And as I said, it's a $30 billion industry. So I just think that's really important to know.
It is important to know, and it's important for all of the young folks that are out there listening to this who are early in their careers trying to, get a green job or be in sustainability somehow. I underscore what you said, Victor. Water is a great gig. So I highly recommend. Dr. Sandoval, I want you to talk to us a little bit about how water governance can be a tremendous determinant of a community's economic and social well-being. Talk to us about that issue.
So water, we use water every day for all the things that you do at home. We use water for all the economic activities that you can think of. So water, access to the right quality of water, it is a determinant for economic well-being. And what I was the water governance is these people making decisions and obeying the law, working within the law, Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act, then we have the human right to water and so on. So these people within that space, they start making decisions of their community. Why it's important that women, Latinos, and every person, every citizen gets into that one? Because we bring our background. This study has made me think a lot of the experiences that we have. So how we look in the mirror matter, because I'm Latino and I might bring my sassiness and I will bring some of the good attitude, right? But also I can speak a couple of languages and go to my community and tell them like, folks, like really we have to fix this. It's going to be more expensive, but we'll get it done. You don't want to have this problem to your kids. You don't pass this problem to others. Now, that is this specific how I look in the mirror helps out. How I look in the mirror doesn't matter because my heart, where our heart is directed, how we align with, I'm not a woman, but I am very passionate about making sure that we include women in the decision making. And what that means is that I'm aligned, my heart is aligned to that one. It doesn't matter how I look in the mirror. What I'm trying to say here is that both of those experiences are important for, at the end, running for office, getting in there, and then working in that space where, yes, we have to meet regulations, but at the same time, we have a community behind that we care about, that we want to have safe, clean, and affordable water. Everyone on their homes, you have access to water. We don't have polluted rivers. We make sure that not only us, I will not leave anyone without water. I think no one, I hope that no one wants to leave me without water. That is a basic concept. So from that one, I think that the governance, the local governance is really important, and how we look and how our hearts align with.
Well said. That was a beautiful sentiment, and I think it's something that can resonate with everyone. Victor, I'm going to go back to you. You know, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, and every individual will find their own way to reflect on that milestone. But it bears repeating that one of the driving motivations behind the colonies banding together to form a separate nation was this battle cry, no taxation without representation. And there's no doubt that it is going to cost a lot of money to ensure that California's water system continues to meet the needs of its population in the years ahead. Our infrastructure in many places is old and broken down. And I just wonder what your thoughts are, but maybe should we apply this same battle cry to the seats of power that will have to raise water rates and taxes to ensure safe, reliable water for California? Should we be saying no taxation without representation?
Well, we absolutely should, and I attribute Dr. Solis for inserting that into our study because it's
Mm.
clearly a guiding principle of the United States of America and most of all democracies, right? That's the beauty of democracy, that every voice counts. Um, but not only does it count, and I'm glad you, Jill, you mentioned our democracy and our the country's history. But I also want to refer to the Federalist Papers. In Federalist 10, uh, they talk about factions. And I believe it was Madison that described the value of factions, and not in a destructive way, but in a way where different opinions is a good thing. You don't want just one thought. You want different, voices. You want different interests, so that you balance out the policy, you balance out the programs. So you don't want a monolithic, idea, policy, program, et cetera. You want to make sure that every voice is heard. Now, is every voice the same? Well, it depends on the numbers, right? If you've got a lot of people living in one particular town, I mean, part of town, they're going to have a lot of influence over others, and we understand that. That's just political reality. But you do want to listen to all factions, all voices, because that makes the end product better. If the soup is, if you're making chicken soup and you just have water and chicken and boil it, it's not going to taste very well. You've got to add the vegetables. You've got to add some spices. You've got to add different things that are available to make it a better product. And that's what the Federalists tend to talk about. And I agree. In addition to no taxation without representation, we have to incorporate all voices.
Well, and
And
representation, as you mentioned, is such a bedrock of the American experiment. You know, when we said we wanted to be have a seat at the table as our economic, undergirdings were being decided, that is no different than what this study is highlighting. We have about a
and
minute left, Victor. Yes, about 1 minute left. Give us our parting thoughts, Dr.
Jill,
Sandoval.
one thing in there is no taxation without representation, and in our case, no decision making without representation.
I think that's very important. And in the last 30 seconds, Victor, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I would encourage people to ask questions of leadership, ask questions of those who are in positions of authority and power, because that's the only way we're going to keep each other accountable. That's the only way we're going to get things done in our democracy.
Well said. Thank you, Victor and Dr. Sandoval, for joining us today. And thank you to all of our listeners who tuned in as well. We'll be here same time, same place next week with more Go Green Radio. Until then, have a wonderful